going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here to talk to you about Ultimate Origins by Brian Michael Bendis and Butch Guice. This was a 5-issue miniseries that was kind of a lead-in to the big Ultimatum event that came shortly after this. And I am kind of torn on this. On the one hand, this is probably my favorite thing that Brian Michael Bendis has ever written. Bear in mind, I am not a fan of Brian Michael Bendis' writing. I can't think of anything else that he's written that I actually enjoyed, so take that for a grain of salt. But also, this is not a story. This is Brian Michael Bendis connecting a whole bunch of dots with Ultimate Marvel continuity. Dots that previously had not been connected, or maybe there were hints, but nothing confirmed. And then this is Bendis actually confirming, hey, you thought that this was true, but actually this is what was going on. And then it kind of opens the doors to, wow, if that's true, then what about this? What about this? What about this? This is not a story. A story has to have a protagonist who is trying to do something, and then they are opposed by something. This does not have any of that. This is jumping around from the 1940s, where we're getting to see a little bit more information on how Steve Rogers became Captain America. We are getting to see the birth of the mutant species in the Ultimate Universe. We're getting to see a little bit more of Nick Fury's life before he became director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and we're getting to see how the super soldier serum connects to Peter Parker in a way that we didn't know before, but there's not a story. We don't have a protagonist. We have Nick Fury, who shows up in a few issues, but he's not especially trying to do anything. At one point, it's about 16 years before the present day, I guess, the president tasks Nick Fury with rebuilding the super soldier program. And so he grabs a few smart guys. He gets Bruce Banner, Richard Parker, Franklin Storm, and Henry Pym. And he says, you guys redesign the super soldier serum. Okay, that is a task, but that is in less than one issue of this 5-issue miniseries. Nick Fury isn't a protagonist who has a goal that he is trying to accomplish. There are no antagonists in this book. We do get to see young Magneto when he, I guess his first act as a mutant freedom fighter. We get to see that. And then we get to see him meeting Charles Xavier, which we had seen a little bit of that before in Mark Millar's Ultimate X-Men run, but this is going even further back and diving a little bit deeper there. But Magneto is shown to be almost his own protagonist here. Traditionally, you would have Charles Xavier and Magneto, two sides of the same coin maybe, and you would say Magneto is Charles Xavier's antagonist. But Charles is in this less than Magneto is. So Magneto doesn't really have an antagonist. We do get to see the part where Magneto breaks Charles Xavier's spine. We also saw that in Ultimate X-Men, but that is in 2 pages of this book, and we just jump right into a giant javelin has been thrown through Charles Xavier. We are not building up to this antagonism between these two, which that issue of Ultimate X-Men, the whole issue was a flashback showing the degradation of the friendship between Magneto and Charles. That did build up to this antagonism, and you had the whole series up to that point was kind of, or at least a good chunk of the series up to that point was showing the different ideologies between Magneto and Charles Xavier. This doesn't really do that. You do get to see where Magneto is coming from. His first act as Magneto, which I would say maybe he's a teenager, like 16 or 17, I guess. We do get to see what he does and why he does it, but it doesn't really build up to this disagreement with Charles Xavier. At one point, Charles and Magneto, Charles has this idea of what the mutant utopia will look like, and they are in the Savage Land, and Magneto says, use your telepathy, show me what this utopia looks like. And then Magneto, using his magnetic powers, he takes metal from somewhere, and then builds this giant sci-fi looking building. And then the next thing we know, Magneto is throwing a javelin through Charles Xavier. So this book does not have a protagonist in the strictest sense of the word. We do get to see people, but they're not really trying to accomplish something, which is a big part of what makes a protagonist a protagonist. You look at the hero's journey, the hero is trying to do something on their journey. Frodo Baggins is trying to destroy the ring. It's not just Gandalf said, hey Frodo, let's go on a road trip. We don't have any destination in mind. We're just going to go and get wasted over in Rivendell. That's not what's happening. They have a goal. No character in this book has a particular goal that we get to see them working toward. We do have characters like Nick Fury is trying to put together the super soldier serum, or in the 40s, Franklin Roosevelt wants what's-his-face to put together the super soldier serum so that they can beat the Nazis, or the aliens who are working with the Nazis. You have little bits and pieces where, okay, yeah, that character has something that they're working toward, but it isn't the crux of this book. There is no antagonist working against anyone who has their own goals. There's nothing like that. We don't get to see any conflict in this story. Like I said, we have a big splash page where a javelin has been thrown through Charles Xavier, but we do not get to see the conflict. We only get to see Charles Xavier is laying on the ground and he's crying as Magneto is thinking at him, saying like, boy, you're wrong, Charles, and this is why you're wrong. But we don't get to see any conflict here. We get to see Nick Fury. He's in a couple of wars, but we don't get to see the conflict that he is part of. And Brian Michael Bendis probably thinks that his strong suit is dialogue. If you open any Bendis comic, it's going to have 10,000 word balloons scattered across the 2 pages, and that is probably what he thinks that he excels at. Personally, I am not the biggest fan of his dialogue. I've always felt like his dialogue felt like it came out of a teen sitcom. I remember listening to a podcast once where he said that he was very much influenced by iCarly and that type of storytelling, and that's very dialogue heavy. And that's why when you're reading something like Ultimate Spider-Man, it makes sense because he's writing teenagers. But then if he's writing something like Secret War that doesn't feature teenagers, it's really weird to hear S.H.I.E.L.D. agents talking like they belong in a high school. And so he thinks that dialogue is his big strong suit, and that's why in this book we are mostly getting dialogue. We're not getting a whole lot of action, and I don't necessarily mean explosions and punching. I mean characters doing things. That counts as action, doing anything, and we don't get to see any of that. This is not a story. What this is connecting the dots. I'll tell you what it reminds me of. I am a big fan of George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series. A Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, the whole kit and caboodle. I'm a big fan of that. And I watched House of the Dragon last year, and spoilers for that show, spoilers for Game of Thrones, for the books, for everything, if you're interested. So before House of the Dragon started airing, the backstory of A Game of Thrones is that 300 years before this book, there was a guy and his 2 sister wives, Aegon the Conqueror, his wives of Cinia and it's not Rhaenyra, Rhaenys, I think. That's wrong. Someone out there is mad that I got that wrong. His 2 sister wives, they come to Westeros and they conquer the kingdoms. And they unite the kingdoms under one ruler. And that was almost 300 years before A Game of Thrones, the book. In House of the Dragon, which is a little over 100 years after that, we find out that Aegon the Conqueror had a vision that there is a terrifying apocalypse where these snow zombies are going to come and invade Westeros, and he came to unite everybody under one ruler so that they would be strong enough to fight back against this oncoming apocalypse. And he believed that the Targaryens, his lineage, had to be there to defeat the Whites, or the Others, as they're called in the books. And that was huge. Everybody, after that revelation in the first episode of House of the Dragon, started recontextualizing just about everything that any of the Targaryens had ever done in the backstory of A Song of Ice and Fire. Anything that we were told in the book Fire and Blood, which covers roughly the first 150 years of the Targaryen dynasty, and A World of Ice and Fire, which is a little bit more abbreviated, but also covers the Targaryen dynasty. Anything we're told there about any character who did anything, finding out that the Targaryens came and conquered so that they could defeat the Others, and that is the overall conflict of the main A Song of Ice and Fire books, you look at it and you say, well, okay, then that must mean this, and that must mean that, and that must mean this. Kind of like Ultimate Origins. For example, Maegor the Cruel, you find out that he basically usurps the throne illegally, and he was a very militant, harsh man, where his brother, the rightful king, was more passive and lenient. And if you know that, okay, all these guys knew that some ice zombies were coming pretty soon, and probably each one thought it was going to be in their lifetime, then it kind of makes sense that Maegor took the throne illegally. At first, before you know that, you're thinking he was just evil and power hungry, but now it's like, oh, okay, that shines a new light on what he's doing. That is what this book feels like. It's not a story. Now, after House of the Dragon Episode 1, it was a lot of fun going back and looking at what we were told about each of the Targaryens, looking at Rhaegar kidnapping Lyanna Stark, and then you find out that happened in a very harsh winter, and so it's like, oh, okay, that's why he did it, because he probably thought, this is the end, it's coming, I have to kidnap her so I can bang her, and then we can produce the guy who's gonna end it all, and he's gonna defeat these ice zombies. That's why he did it. Oh, okay, it puts a new spin on it. It's a lot of fun going back and looking at something that you thought you understood, and then looking at it through a new light once you have a new piece of information. It's fun to go back and look at the Ultimate Universe, and after you know, according to this book, that the mutants in the Ultimate Universe are a man-made entity and that they are not a natural occurring thing like we thought, and as is the case in the main Marvel Universe, it is a lot of fun to then go back and look at some of the stuff in the Ultimate Universe with that bit of knowledge. It's interesting to find out that Nick Fury was a World War II veteran, and that was a thing in the main Marvel Comics, the 616 universe. Nick Fury was a World War II veteran. In the Ultimate Universe, that was never a thing. When we first meet him, he was maybe in his 40s in the early 2000s, but then we find out here that he was a World War II veteran and that he was more directly connected to the Super Soldier project than what we originally thought. That's a lot of fun. It doesn't always work. The way that this tries to connect Bruce Banner to the Super Soldier Serum, in my opinion, when you go back and look at Mark Millar and Brian Hitch's Ultimates run, that makes very little sense there when you take into account what happens here. I'll just go ahead and say it. Nick Fury, he recruited Banner, Hank Pym, Franklin Storm, and Richard Parker. Then Franklin Storm, he's poached to go somewhere else. And then Richard Parker, he's outside with his wife and his baby, Peter Parker, and then Bruce Banner says, look, we have the Super Soldier Serum, and it's kind of sort of like the movie Fantastic, where he says, if we hand this to Nick Fury, then he's going to take it to the president, and we will never get recognized for creating this. So Bruce Banner does the test on himself, and that is how the Hulk first comes about. And then the Hulk accidentally kills Richard and Mary Parker. And then Nick Fury, he ends up imprisoning the Hulk for, I guess, 15 or 16 years, and that doesn't make a lot of sense because before this book, here's what we knew about the Hulk. He showed up in an issue of Ultimate Marvel Team Up, and that scene is reproduced here, where the Hulk was telling Spider-Man, you and I, we're connected. They don't want you to know, but you and I are connected. And then we kind of find out how they're connected in this book, in that Oscorp and the Hulk, those were both attempts at recreating the Super Soldier program. But then the Hulk shows up in that issue of Ultimate Marvel Team Up, and then he disappears, and then the next time we see him, Bruce Banner is chatting with Nick Fury. They're having lunch. They both seem very friendly with each other, and Nick Fury says, so, how's it feel to not have the Hulk in you anymore? And Bruce Banner says, it feels great. And then he recreates the Hulk because he's jealous of Betty Ross, and then he's the Hulk again throughout the rest of the Ultimate Universe. That does not make any sense. If Nick Fury knew that Bruce Banner defied his orders of doing human testing and then got Richard and Mary Parker killed with his recklessness, Nick Fury would not be having a fun, breezy lunch with Bruce Banner. Nick Fury is a very shady guy. I have said that before. Nick Fury of the Ultimate Universe, depending on who's writing him, is basically a villain. He's kind of like Amanda Waller in that he is working for a good cause, protecting the country, but he does a lot of really, really shady things in the process of protecting the country. But he would not be saying, hey, Bruce, buddy, how you doing? When 15 years earlier he got 2 innocent people killed because he wanted to be famous. I don't think that Nick Fury would have even let Bruce Banner 1,000 feet of trying to recreate the Super Soldier program in Millar and Hitch's Ultimates run. I don't think that he would have done that. That's just my opinion. So that is a retcon here that does not make any sense. The mutants being a man-made thing that started in a lab, I actually kind of like that. I thought that was an interesting idea that sets the Ultimate Universe a little bit apart from the main Marvel Universe. And that is actually the connective tissue with Ultimatum, as I understand it. I've never read Ultimatum, but my understanding is the revelation that mutants were man-made, that kind of comes to the open in Ultimatum. But spoilers for that, I guess. But yeah, this isn't a story. This is not a story. It's fun and interesting. It's really cool to get to see them throw some of these retcons at you, and then you can go back and look at what came before, and you can either say, oh, that's really interesting, or, oh, that doesn't make any sense at all. That makes less sense than what it did before, but it's not a story. I don't know if I can actually recommend this. The only way that I could recommend it is if your library has a copy and you can read it for free, or if you find it on the sidewalk and you pick it up for free. I cannot recommend paying money for this because it's not a story. Now, if that doesn't bother you, then go ahead and buy it. But for me, I want a story. I want something that resembles a story, and it has to have those elements of protagonist, antagonist acting against the protagonist going on some kind of quest or journey. They're trying to do something, and this does not have any of those elements. So while I enjoyed a lot of it, it is not a story that I can recommend. I cannot recommend it. So those are my thoughts on Ultimate Origins. I hope you guys like this video, and I will be back in the future with something else. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day. Catch you later.